What is going on? Welcome back to Trending Stocks. Today, we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down on what's really plaguing SoFi, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Always greatly appreciate that. And with that said, let's get right to it. So currently, SoFi is down 1.62%. Pre-market, there was a hell of a lot of optimism, similar to the last several days. But as soon as the market does open, it just tanked all the way down to the low for today of $7.21. Give or take. So it's kind of interesting to see that happen time and time again, just constant manipulation happening behind the scenes. I even did post this. And so this was the short information from yesterday after I did my SoFi video. And you do see cost of borrow average being negative 0.81%. And so cost of borrow is ultimately brokers charging people who want to borrow shares to short, right? So that's typically what happens. But right now there's about 4 or 5 brokers offering shares of SoFi. So as a consensus, their average is negative 0.81%. So that is crazy. So there's a lot of brokers out there physically paying people to short SoFi. So this was a brief occurrence, but still regardless, a lot of manipulation is happening behind the scenes. So I found this kind of interesting. I'll go over shorts and everything, what they're doing right now. But today there has been no news from SoFi itself, no SEC filings. You can tell despite the sell-off that did happen, throughout the day, there's been several occurrences that it shows signs of life. It does want to break out. It's bouncing off of a very strong support, despite a lot of the technicals breaking down. So I'm going to go again over all of that. There's a lot of analysts as well coming out saying that they are hesitant about 2024 and consumers, despite some relatively positive retail sales that came out a couple days back, which once again, it kind of makes you question, why are all these analysts now negative? Even with Mizuho, they gave a $12 price target. They lowered that from 14 from, I guess, their last rating. So it's just a lot of interesting stuff all happening at once. And I feel like 2024 has started off like getting hit and punched in the face numerous times. It's crazy. And then to top it all off, there's this. So Biden did give the rubber stamp to forgive another $5 billion in student debt. Keep in mind, it's technically like anything when it talks on student debt is going to in turn really affect SoFi, but at the same time, it doesn't really directly affect it. So just keep in mind, it's more of a sentiment aspect for that. But moving on though, like I said about yesterday, there was a lot of interesting things that was happening on the short side of it. Today, they are doubling down. So right now they're increasing 1.81 million shares. 13.88% of the free float is being shorted. 124.19 million shares overall are being shorted, and cost of borrow average is 0.82%. So once again, you kind of see those glimpses of manipulation that does happen. Doesn't happen all the time, but still it's something to kind of note. And when it comes to options, so right now $4.75 million in calls being purchased versus 2.36 million in puts. Sentiment wise, a little bit more optimistic versus yesterday. So 46% of all the options being done today are bullish. And of the call options that are being purchased, you do see a very strong consensus now for it to be above 750 by the end of next week. So you kind of see some optimism, like I said. So that's kind of a good thing. But looking at some of the puts though, you do see a consensus for it to be sub $7, more of a technical breakdown. And based on the latest Elliott wave, which is right here, they did update. So it does show a pivot point now of $8.28. And for as long as it is below that, it did lower the previous target. So it was, I think, high 5s to low 6s. Now it is 530 to 582. So I don't know. Technicals are breaking down, like I said. It's really failing to hold any strong support levels, with the exception of the one that it is currently on. So interesting to see if this is going to hold or not. Big money clearly has been really looking at SoFi today. So these are some of the transactions that have occurred on the secondary market above $100,000. So for a Friday, it is fairly good, in my opinion. Keep in mind though, I'm not a financial advisor. You guys always do your own due diligence. But right now, like I said, it is bouncing off of this S3, so $7.29. The kind of the last line in the sand ultimately. So we really want to watch for it to close above that for today. And as well, $7.60 is going to be the next strong resistance. And quickly going back over here to calls, looking at the open interest, assuming it is able to close above $7, you're going to have about 2,000 in open interest that is going to be expiring in the money. So that means market makers are going to have to cover that. I have brought up the very big amount of call options at that 750 strike price, which was 36,000. So clearly, again, market makers had a financial interest to really manipulate the price of SoFi to bring it below 750, meaning they wouldn't have to cover that 36,000 in options. If you don't know options, highly suggest researching them. They can be very, very profitable and very beneficial. But moving on, like I said, these are some points to watch for, support and resistance points. And right here, looking at momentum, shows number of retail investors have been still continuing to get out, and stochastic is at 4, so no defined trend, but it is considered oversold. So a lot of things are all happening with SoFi all at once. It's another interesting day as usual. So we just have to realize that about, was it 6 business days or trading days counting today until their upcoming earnings, on which maybe this will be the time that after the earnings they spike and continue its rally up to maybe 9, 10, 11, or who knows. Let me know your thoughts. Like I said, I just want to play 1 minute and 17 seconds of this because it does portray the mentality that a lot of analysts do have about consumers going into 2024.
Our next guest, though, has some doubts about the consumer as we look further into the new year. Joining us now is mall owner Ray Washburn, Charter Holdings CEO. He's also chairman of Sunoco. Ray, always good to have you. Why the negative outlook as this year progresses for the consumer?
So, David, we own luxury centers around the country, and what we saw at the end of last year was jewelry sales were very strong, but fashion, clothing, and stuff like that have really, really slowed down, and we're somewhat flat. Also, the retailers aren't expanding right now. In the last 2 or 3 years, this pandemic high has really been a sobering effect on them, and they're going to be remodeling stores but not looking at big expansion. And really, the primary problem is credit card debt is at an all-time high. Mortgage rates are being reset. So the consumer that's spending on the high end is starting to get very, very cautious on what they're spending. And so we did have a good year last year, but I'm very, very cautious about going into this year, and I'm hearing it from them. The operating costs are still extremely high from us as a mall owner as well. Insurance costs are through the roof. Construction costs are still extremely high. And so we're going into this year very, very cautious on what's going to end up happening this year.
So obviously he did touch on some of the hot topics that some bears have on SoFi, such as the increase in credit card debt, mortgages, and just the increase in risk. So we'll just have to wait and see 6 more days until their earnings to see what Anthony does say ultimately and what future guidance they do give. So let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. Give yourself a shout out. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? It does look like it is bouncing higher. So yeah, hopefully we do close very strong to the end of the week. So let me know your thoughts. And with all that said, I appreciate all of you watching.